on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 366 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. I'm kidding, of course. I am not going to do another 364 videos for this year. That would probably kill me. But I had a person who commented on a couple of my videos last year and was recommending that I talk about Neil Gaiman's The Sandman series. I hope this user doesn't mind me mentioning him by name. His name was Alp Gerton. I hope that I pronounced that correctly. But he had asked that I talk about The Sandman, and I do not have access to the entire series. I read this series back in high school, so it's been over 10 years since I read any of this, and my library is how I read the series, no longer has all the volumes. They have a few volumes, but not in order. It's like volume 3 and 8 or something like that, but I was able to get volume 1 pretty cheap online. This is Preludes and Nocturnes. This is the first 8 issues of the series. It lasted a good long while, like 10 or 11 volumes, I think, and the artists on this book are Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Malcolm Jones III. And the writer is Neil Gaiman. He was on the series throughout the entire run. I'm pretty sure as you get further and further into the series, there are different artists who work on the series. But to start with, we have Sam Keith and Malcolm Jones III and Mike Dringenberg. Sam Keith, I think, left after like issue 3 or 4. In the back of the book, there's an afterword by Neil Gaiman where he talked about how Sam Keith felt like he was kind of the weak link in a group of really amazing, talented people, and so he didn't want to be on the book anymore, and that's where Dringenberg and Malcolm Jones took over. And I like the art here. It's very sketchy, it's very dark tonally, and I think that's very appropriate for the subject matter that we've got here. The premise of this book, if you've never heard of this series, you have the main character, Dream. He is the Sandman. He is the Lord of Dreams, and he is one of the Endless. The Endless are these entities that are over different concepts of our lives, and they are kind of like gods. At one point in this book, a character, the Martian Manhunter, he actually calls the Sandman a god, but later on in the series, I'm pretty sure that they differentiate between the Endless and the gods. But we don't get to see many of the Endless in this book. We get to see a couple of them, Dream and his older sister. I won't reveal who his older sister is that shows up, because in that issue, it's played as kind of a reveal of who she is. But they are in this book featured very prominently, and then we get to see his brother Destiny in like one panel here. But all those characters will show up and be much more prominently featured later on. Characters like Desire, Delirium, Destruction. So those characters will be more heavily featured as the series goes on. But right now, we are focusing on Dream, also known as Morpheus. He is the ruler of dreams, and in the early 1900s, about 1914, 1916, I think, he is captured by a group of occultists who are trying to capture Death, and they accidentally capture Death's younger brother, Dream. And they take some of his items that he uses to do his job as Lord of Dreams. They take his helmet, his pouch of sand, and his ruby. And then these items get scattered and go in different directions. And then he is trapped for like 70 years or something. It's like 1988 whenever he is finally able to escape. And then his goal in this book is to get these items back and then reclaim his kingdom and basically undo all of the damage that has happened to his kingdom while he's been imprisoned. And that is the immediate goal here. The overall goal of this character throughout this entire series is he has to learn to change in order to survive. Basically, he understands that things have changed while he was gone, and he has to change if he's going to keep going in his role as Lord of Dreams. And that's kind of his ongoing character arc throughout this entire series. I really like this book a lot. This is one of the books, along with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, Grant Morrison's Animal Man, and Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. Those series kind of paved the way for Vertigo, which was a subsection of DC Comics that allowed for more adult-oriented stories where you don't have to worry about a kid reading this and being traumatized. And there is some stuff here, and this is early on in the series. I think it gets even more adult-oriented the further you get into the series, but this particular volume wasn't technically under Vertigo. This is just a series that paved the way. I'm not exactly sure at what point in the series the Vertigo line was founded, but there is some stuff here. If you have children, I would read this before you hand it to a little kid. There's some stuff here that is a little bit frightening. There's one particular issue that's very disturbing, and then there's some stuff that it kind of gracefully avoids the stuff while leaving it to your imagination, which could in theory be worse. There's one issue here where the Sandman goes to hell in order to get his helmet, and that issue is very gross. The demons are very disgusting looking, and hats off to the artist of that issue. I'm not sure if that was Sam Keith or if that was after he left, but the demons, they look very disgusting, so he did his job. But that issue is a little bit frightening. I imagine it would be frightening to a child. There's one issue later on where a character stabs their eyes out, and fortunately, it doesn't get in your face with it. It doesn't show you every gruesome detail of it. It kind of, the panel border, the top of the panel border comes to like here, so when she stabs her eyes out, you're not seeing it, but it's left to your imagination, so in theory, that could be worse. But this is before the founding of Vertigo, but this book and those others that I mentioned kind of made people higher up realize, hey, maybe there's something here. People really like these books. Maybe we can make an entire line where people can just go to those books, and then we're not having to kind of rein these artists in trying to do their vision. But one thing I really like about the early parts of the series is that this is set in the DC universe. Apparently, at some point, the Vertigo stuff was technically set in its own little world, so if something happened in a Vertigo book, it did not happen in the main DC line. I think that's a little weird, especially since so many of these books have their roots in the DC superhero universe. Characters like Swamp Thing and Animal Man, they are superheroes. They've met characters like Superman, so it's a little weird that later on in like issue 70 of Animal Man, his series is no longer set in the same world as Superman and Batman. Here we get to see Mr. Miracle and the Martian Manhunter, and I like that issue quite a bit. In the afterword here, Neil Gaiman said that he thought maybe that was a mistake trying to push superheroes into the series. I didn't mind. Dr. Destiny, who is a villain that the Justice League fought in the 60s, he is a main part of this book, and his origins are slightly revised here. We find out where he got the source of his powers. It was actually one of the tools that the Sandman had lost when he was captured. We also find out that his parents were actually part of the occult group that had captured the Sandman. I thought that was kind of cool. This also ties in the Sandman with Wesley Dodd, who was the Sandman of the Justice Society. More or less completely unrelated here, but we find out here that because Morpheus was trapped, that there had to be someone else who kind of takes on the power of dreams, and that is something that goes on to Wesley Dodd. And then later on, that actually shows up in Kingdom Come. He had this power of dreams that then he passes on to Norman McKay in Kingdom Come, and also in another Vertigo series, Sandman Mystery Theater, which features Dodd's, it's either Dodd or Dodds, I can't remember, but featured him in the 1930s and 40s, and he has this ability of dreaming, and so that all comes back to here, where we are tying that into the Sandman there. Later on, I'll talk about this a little bit here, but in the next volume, The Doll's House, we find out that the Jack Kirby Sandman from the 1970s, the one with the red and yellow costume, even he was kind of connected to the Sandman a little bit. We find out that a couple of the minor characters from that series are actually minions or lackeys of Morpheus, and then whenever he vanished, they kind of went and did their own thing. They are mentioned by name here, but you don't get to see them until Volume 2. But I kind of like the references to DC stuff. I kind of like, we get to see Arkham Asylum here, and it's very creepy. We don't get to spend a whole lot of time there, but if you like books like Madness or Secrets, different books that are set in Arkham Asylum and really try and capitalize on the weirdness, you'll probably like this, because we only get to spend a little bit of time there, but you get to see the Scarecrow. He's talking about how Two-Face tried to strangle himself, and Scarecrow, he hung a guard, and then he was pretending to hang himself to try and scare people. It's really creepy, and we don't even spend that much time here, and that is another situation where less is more. They're not getting in your face with it. They do show the guard who's been hung, but other than that, it's not really getting in your face with all this really scary stuff, but what they're telling you is kind of terrifying. I like this series. I like that Gaiman is using the mythos of the existing DC universe while also adding his own stuff to it, some other stuff that he used here, some of the characters from the horror titles of the late 60s, early 70s, like House of Mystery and House of Secrets. The hosts of those books were Cain and Abel, and they show up here as minions or citizens in Dream's world. They were kind of like the Crypt Keeper. They were show up at the beginning of the book, and then they would tell you the story that you would read in that issue. Also, there were three witches, kind of like the sisters from Macbeth, and I'm assuming that's kind of the genesis of these characters, and I believe they were the hosts of the series The Witching Hour, and they also show up in this volume. We also have other characters who will later on be much more important in the Vertigo universe. Lucifer, he shows up here. He later gets his own series written by Mike Carey, and he proves to be kind of important in this series later on. We also get to see characters like Mervyn Pumpkinhead, who only shows up in one panel here, and then I don't know if Gaiman actually had an idea of what he would be doing with Pumpkinhead, because later on, when we see him, he acts very different than what I feel like he would be acting here. But we get to see characters like Lucian, the librarian. We also get to see hints of stuff that will be happening later on. For example, there's a character, Roderick, I believe it's Roderick Burgess, who's the son of the occultist who originally captured Morpheus. His boyfriend actually shows up like in Volume 9 or something, and I remember the first time I was reading this series, by the time I had gotten to Volume 9, I had actually completely forgotten about this character, but he had shown up briefly in this volume, and he shows up later on. There's another character who is related to a character that we see here. Gaiman, he was really planning some of this stuff well in advance. I don't know how much of this was planned from the beginning, but he makes it look like it was all seamless and it was all planned from the beginning, and that's very impressive. I like this series. If you've never read it before, I would give this volume a shot, and even if you don't like this volume, I feel like it falls into place more with later volumes. I'm not even saying anything bad about this volume because I like this one quite a bit, but Gaiman himself even says that this book, it kind of had a little bit of a rough start. Personally, I don't see it. I like this book quite a bit. I like all the mythology stuff that Gaiman is dealing with, building his own universe while also using elements of the DC universe as a base for this universe that he's building. I like that quite a bit. I think that this is a pretty solid series. I wasn't sure how it would hold up. This is one of those things that I could very easily see my high school self. I was a little bit of an idiot in high school. I would read books from the Vertigo line and I would say, yes, I'm 16, I'm mature, I'm intelligent, I can read this, it's for me. But a lot of this stuff was going over my head when I was 16, 17, whenever I was reading this. So I feel like this is something that you would probably want to kind of keep this out of reach of children. Like I said, there are some things here that would be a little scary for a kid. They're a little scary even as an adult, I would say. For example, the issue where Morpheus goes to hell. Some of those demons are a little terrifying. But anyway, I think this is a great series. I would highly recommend that you read Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes. And like I said, I don't have access to the rest of the series. I am going to try and buy some of the other volumes because I enjoyed this and I want to reread the rest of the series. So those are my thoughts on Volume 1 of the Sandman. I hope that you guys liked this video, and I will see you sometime in the future, not tomorrow. I'm not going to be doing another 364 videos, but in the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you later. Have a good one.